We are tonight's entertainment.
You can't handle the truth.
The fire rises.
Pizza time.
You're a wizard, Harry.
So HBK.
You know how much I sacrifice?
You think that's air you're breathing?
Groovy.
I don't have friends. I got family.
We are Saxophone! 1, 2, 3, 4!
Craft Services.
So, Trent.
So, Parth. Hello.
Good to see you. It's been a while.
We have a podcast. Here we are.
We took a week off.
Yeah. Cruise Palooza. Did we lose any steam?
I choose not to look at the analytics anymore. It only makes me unhappy.
Why did we take the week off?
We had to record this intro, and it was Thanksgiving break, and our schedules got kind of busy, and then Sunday came along, and you texted me, we should probably record sometime soon, and I said, we are taking the week off. I made the executive decision. I think it's fine. I think we've earned... our last break was just before doing Jaws Summer, and that was just so long ago, you know?
Yeah.
Haven't we earned just this? Is this not enough?
So much has happened.
Speaking of so much that's happened, there's so much that's been eaten, so much that's been consumed, and I'd like to know what you have eaten most recently, and maybe I already know the answer to this question.
We baked some cookies that we got some from Pillsbury cookie dough that we got from Krauser's, and we made it in the oven. And they were I wanted to make all of them at once, so they was so concentrated on the baking sheet that they all kind of grew into one like collective thing. But once you cut it up, it kind of doesn't make a difference. But good, had 2 of them. Here we are. I'm so frantic that I'm relieved that we're not doing an episode and that we're just doing the intro, because I don't know if you're in the place mentally to record a whole discussion either.
No, but I am in a place to tell you what I've been eating most recently.
You're good at that.
Yeah.
Keep
I
us on
went
track.
into New York to do my internship at Thunder Road Pictures. Go see John Wick 4, everybody. And while I was there, I bought 2 slices of pizza. Normal pizza.
Normal pizza.
It was kind of funny because it was like an Italian, like they had like New York accents, and they were like talking like, I'm a fucking New Yorker, like, and it was like, whoa, you actually talk like that. That's interesting.
I mean, I guess that's why people do the accents.
Yeah. But yeah, that's what I've been eating. Do we have any other things to say? Do we just cue the intro, or?
Yeah, no, let's go to the part where we talk about the movie of the week this week on our show.
Cue the intro.
Did you like that voice?
I did, Parth. We've really been reduced to mush by this point.
Welcome back to Craft Services, where we talk about the movies. Each week we talk about a film, and hopefully have a crew member of that film to talk with us about their experience working on the picture. This week we are talking
with Clint Wallace about Michael Mann's Collateral, and he was the set decorator. Yeah?
Yes.
Yep, and we also talked about some other cool movies he worked on, like The Curious Case of Benjamin Button, John Wick Chapter 3, Parabellum, Top Gun Maverick, and of course, our film for today, Michael Mann's Collateral.
Yes, and I wish I could tell you what we talk about specifically in this episode, given that this is a 2-parter, but I have not yet edited this episode while we are recording this intro, I'm sorry to say. So, for current recording Trent and Parth, it's as much of a surprise as what you're going to listen to as future listener. You know what I mean? Current listener for you, but future for us. But we're past for you, but current for us right now. It makes you think.
I'm thinking.
Yeah. No, you're a thinker. That's what they call you. That's what they say about you, right?
Parth, we're really in the meat of Cruise Palooza. Jeez. I'm feeling the heat.
You're feeling... What are you... Is the heat the only thing you feel?
I'm feeling a lot of things.
You're not feeling a need?
No, no, I'm feeling some needs.
A need for what?
Everything's been, a little slow, and I'm just looking for some speed. And not in the bad way. In the
Rubbing up your rug, listen to a howl and go.
in our last discussion, in our Magnolia discussion, in the intro, Parth, remember when I was away from Mike getting my vodka cran and you sang the entirety of that song?
Episode. I have not.
But you sang like 2 of your songs to completion, and I left it all in the edit.
Did you really?
Intentionally, yeah. No, the comic timing.
That is
some
something
humorous
else.
edits.
Well, I guess just speaking of humorous edits, let's just edit right into this interview because it's a good one,
Us, Clint Wallace, Q's, A's,
Yes.
Parth,
and this is the
me,
last
Clint.
interview we recorded for this year.
Did we? And
Yeah.
so we just did the switcheroo. Why put Collateral before War of the Worlds? Just out of curiosity.
I just did them in release order.
Mm.
So Magnolia, then
That's just like the
Collateral.
secret science, the secret sauce behind the science,
There's lots of sauces going on cooking.
How the
about
sausage
in-
science gets
and,
made.
and if there's one thing about craft services, it's a sausage fest.
Yes and no. I don't want to be known for that.
Yeah, no. The words left my mouth, and I wasn't very happy with them. Well, but you know whose words we were happy with?
Clint Wallace's.
Maybe.
Hence the interview.
Yeah. So I think we should just not prolong the suffering that the
Stalling?
listeners are going through.
Stalling.
Yeah, stalling. Sorry.
Stalling.
Stalling.
Stalling. Jordan. Stalling. Stalling.
Is that friend of the show, Jordan Sycophus, in the background?
Wait, from the Nope discussion? The very same?
No, you guys have me.
No, it can't be her.
Wait, she's
can't
not
be her.
stalling the episode. Are you stalling?
Stop.
Stalling? Stalling.
Stop.
Dun, 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 dun.
Cue the intro.
Cue the intro. Bow, 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 bow.
Rubbing up your rug, listen to a howl and go. Begging you to touch and go.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to our interview with Clint Wallace. He's worked on such films as The Curious Case of Benjamin Button, John Wick Chapter 3 Parabellum, and Top Gun Maverick, and as well as our film for today, Michael Mann's Collateral. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you guys, and props to you guys for putting this together. I think it's a good lesson for young filmmakers to realize you can reach out to people, and people like to talk about themselves. So I'm sure it's impressive, the list of people that you've had on so far, but it's good to take the initiative and do that. It's something I wish I would have done more of as a young person.
The main lesson to be learned is how many successful people's emails are just their first initial last name at Gmail, and you can just kind of cold call them and they respond, which is surprising.
Yeah.
The response is the most interesting thing.
Because sometimes they're like, how'd you find me? I'm too famous for you.
Yeah. But then they do it anyway.
So, to start off, I guess just what was your relationship with film like at a young age?
So I would say, and I'm sure not the only one to probably say this, but Star Wars was a big one for me. I am old enough that I saw it in the theaters in the original release in 1977, 76, in Seattle, lined up around the block to see it. And after that, I was, buying all the making of books, the art of Star Wars, how they made the land speeders levitate with the mirrors and all the miniatures. And So, and I was an art kid. I was into art. So that was definitely an influence. And I also think, early on, I kind of knew I was interested in making environments and creating alternate worlds for other people. It was something from Halloween mazes or whatever it was. And so, like Disneyland, I was a big fan of, and Walt Disney. There was this show called The Wonderful World of Disney that showed all these some good, some bad Disney films in the late '70s, and would watch that religiously every Sunday night. So that kind of world building was always, a big influence for me. And a funny side note, I now live in Los Feliz in Los Angeles, and I live on the street that Walt and Roy grew up on, and they bought their first house. And I found later in the house that I bought that there are these weird little Mickey Mouse doorknobs and things, and leaned into the history and realized Walt Disney owned our house. The house actually slid down in the Northridge earthquake in 1989, but the foundation is still there and the old bricks. And so it's just kind of a trip to think of, being a kid from Seattle and then living in
Walt Disney's house.
Walt Disney's house, and then also being employed by Disney with all the Marvel films. The Disneys have
It all comes full circle.
paid a fair amount of my salary along the way.
So, predating Disney, how did you first find yourself on set in any capacity?
So like I said, I grew up in Seattle, and this was not cool Seattle like it is now. There was no Nirvana, there was no Pearl, whatever grunge. There was no Amazon, there was no Microsoft. It was a Boeing town that both my parents worked for, and so I never considered film as even a real thing. Never really even crossed my mind, even though I loved movies and I was into it. But I went for a more kind of practical route and got a degree in architecture. So undergraduate in math and art, and then graduate degree in architecture at UCLA. And so I was really committed to architecture. And when I went to school there, it was a really exciting time in architecture. We had, Frank Gehry, Zaha Hadid, Daniel Libeskind, all as professors, Tom Main as professors or lecturers. And those were my heroes. And that's who I wanted to be, like changing the face of architecture. So I worked for a firm. I got my license. I was there for a number of years. And then a buddy of mine who went to school with me, who is now a very successful production designer, said, "Hey, why don't you come join me on this film on Pluto Nash?" So that was in '99. And I came on in a kind of weird capacity. I was lucky that it was this transitional time in art departments where the computer was starting to be introduced in 3D modeling, which was a novel thing. And so I had that skill set. And so they kind of brought me on as a computer specialist, 3D specialist. And that kind of pushed me also into, because there was only a handful of guys at the time that were doing it. So that pushed me into the kind of bigger film trajectory that I ended up on, because only bigger films would need us or would afford us. So science fiction like Serenity and Pirates of the Caribbean and Men in Black and all the Marvel movies, that kind of was my door in. But my joke, I tell everybody, is I never wanted to do film. I thought film was kind of slumming it. Architecture was a more noble profession, and that's real, and film was something that wasn't. But my perspective has certainly changed on that, especially after designing restaurants that no longer exist. A lot of architecture is not very permanent. It gets remodeled or destroyed, and film, like Pirates of the Caribbean, it lives on forever. Or so yeah. So Pluto Nash, I'm also very proud that it's known as one of the biggest box office bombs of all time, and that was my first movie. So I wear that as a badge of honor for sure. But I met a lot of good people, and there were a lot of amazing, talented people, and I was definitely hooked after doing that. And then that led to Collateral not long after, I know we're going to talk about, and that kind of led me down the path.
Yeah, I was gonna ask. Actually, my next question was gonna be how you came to be involved with Collateral and how you got involved with that production team.
So what's funny is on Pluto Nash, I did that, and then there was kind of a dry spell a little bit, and I sent out randomly like a little portfolio of this is what I do with computer modeling in the 3D world, and like 2 or 3 years later, I got a call from David Wasco, the amazing production designer on Collateral, and he had held on to this packet for like 3 years, and gave me a call. So it actually paid off. So I was hired on that as a set designer. It was early in my career, so well before I was into production design. So I had a somewhat limited role on that, but certainly a lot of exposure to everything. And David was like one of the first. I've been really lucky that I've got to work with some of the top production designers in the business. David did all Wes Anderson's early films, Bottle Rocket and Rushmore. He did Quentin Tarantino, Kill Bill, won the Academy Award for La La Land, and I'm still friends with him to this day. Very nice guy. And, along the way, Rick Heinrichs on Pirates of the Caribbean. Don Burt is the guy that got me in the business, that got me in the union, who is David Fincher's designer, and that I did Benjamin Button with, and a couple other Fincher projects, and Bo Welsh I did Men in Black with, who did Edward Scissorhands and Beetlejuice and Men in Black, and amazing. So I've been really lucky, starting with David, that I was exposed to all these super, way more talented than me people.
I'm curious, before we dive into Collateral, whether or not your architecture background is more or less applicable to film set life than you thought it would be.
Definitely. I think it was an advantage for me to have that kind of technical knowledge coming in, and a lot of art departments liked that idea. Again, it was another avenue in, coming in as a licensed architect, because understanding structure, really understanding how things go together, that's always a valuable skill set when it comes to the construction side of things. So many complaints you get from the construction department is people really don't know how to build. They don't know, they'll draw a pretty picture, but they really don't know how it goes together. So that was an advantage, and again, kind of enabled me to work on bigger projects, like big, huge builds that involved, structure and more than just, 1x3 flats, in a room.
So you were talking about the great directors that you've worked with, and Collateral is directed by Michael Mann. And I was wondering, did you have a lot of, if any, like communication with him, or were you mostly just talking to production designer David Wasco?
Yeah, we definitely had interaction with Michael. It's no secret that Michael is not the easiest director in the world, and he has that reputation. So if Michael's listening, I'm sure he's not offended. But yes, he's
We hope he's listening.
That would be very
Yes.
flattering and surprising.
he's definitely a perfectionist, and known for doing 30 or 40 takes. Known for kind of exacting on every detail. So it definitely made it a challenging project, a rewarding project. But as I've gone through my career and worked with a lot of amazing directors who don't work that way, you kind of realize that, hey, everybody has their own process, and Michael's made amazing movies, and I feel very lucky and privileged that I got to work on what I consider the last good Michael Mann movie that he's made in the last few years. So it works for him, but it definitely, I think there's an evolution in film, which is nice to see, that kind of auteur, director, tough on everybody role. I just see a lot less of that now, I just worked with, all these amazing Marvel directors, with Sam Raimi on Strange, with John Watts on Spider-Man, with, Chloe Zhao on Eternals, and Destin Critton on Shang-Chi, goes, and all, very nice, a very different approach, more collaborative, more kind of, more open to the whole team collaborative process. So like one example I could point out on Collateral, and there's a few, but we were coming up with the design for the cab top, the ad that's on top of the cab, and we knew this would be a very important element because the cab is half the movie, and Michael was super demanding about just what was the color of the paint and the tint of the paint, and it had to have a particular blue in it. And so our poor graphic designer did like over 100 different cleared ads, had a whole book of all these ads for Michael to choose from. And the day before shooting, he decided he didn't like any of them. And he ripped a Bacardi ad out of a magazine and said, "I want this," which was not cleared, of course.
Yeah.
So I don't know what legal did to clear that. Who knows? But we had to create it like the night before and print it. There wasn't even time to print it, at a print shop. So I had one of those big, large HP printers. So we printed it in-house on paper and slapped it up there. And that's what you see, in the movie throughout.
I wanted to ask, the movie is a very Los Angeles movie, and a lot of scenes are just Jamie Foxx and Tom Cruise driving around at night. And I was wondering, did you have to dress Los Angeles, or were you guys kind of just, because it's in the present day, allowing it to just be what it was?
No, there's lots of dressing. I'm sure, as you know, talking to other designers, that a location is never a location, You're always modifying it in some way. You're changing graphics. You're cleaning up. Like, there was a lot of murals that which is prominent in the film. So we were, Michael liked a mural somewhere, and we'd have to paint a whole mural, like on one of the gas stations, and then every location, there was multiple locations, like when the body falls on the car, one was, there was an exterior, then there was a different alley for, the other shot, and it's all kind of stitched together. So, there was definitely lots of modifications. The whole, it's, I think, one of the best portrayals of Los Angeles at night, and it was very intentional to find locations that were unique. That's not stuff you'd seen before, that showed LA in a very different way. And it was, there were really no storyboards on the movie, as I recall. It was our location manager, who was, Michael kind of has this mafia group that it's like his New York mafia group of his circle. And one of them is this guy, and he's been with him for years. And he's the location manager, but he also kind of did these visual storyboards. So he kind of went out and shot and kind of, stitch it together in a kind of storyboard kind of way of, the progression of the movie and the progression through the evening of how that goes. So that was a unique angle on, coming up with the look. But, there was lots of scouting that I was not a part of, with Tom being involved and all that.
So I guess I'm just curious about like the logistics of having a movie that involves so much like open driving and how that works with like resetting and stuff. So are they just like driving in a circular route for every take? And are they on a trailer, and are streets closed?
Yeah. And again, because I was not the production designer or the art director in this, I was less involved. But yes, you lock the street down, and I know there were tons of cars. I think there were 17 cabs, something like that were built for that, and some cabs had, they removed the engine and they put a camera rig. Like when they wanted to get a two shot of Jamie and Tom from the windshield, they had a special rig for that was outside. Then they had different ones for getting side shots. They had different ones for, all that. So, there was all different kinds of vehicles that were used depending on the shot. And yes, you come up with you have to always think about allowing for a loop. So, vehicles, whenever you're doing a movie, it's something to think about. You got to make sure so you don't have to back them up and they can come around the block and do it again.
It's like Jaws. There's a left to right shark and a right to left shark.
Uh-huh.
So one of the sets that I was interested in was the scene where Jamie Foxx and Tom Cruise go into like the jazz room. If you could talk about designing that or working on that.
Yeah, that was my set. Actually, I designed that set. And it was based on, I think it was called Fever, and we used the exterior, which is in Koreatown in Los Angeles, and we did our own version of it on stage. And I know not to talk too much smack on Michael, but I do remember another story where I think we were shooting on a Monday, and Michael came in the set on a Friday, and there were all these kind of bands built into the set, kind of reflective. It was, this highly reflective. We wanted to, make it dark but reflective. So you got a lot of kick, and it had definitely a sinister, Korean vibe a little bit. So there were these like bands with these silver accents built into it, and I remember, I think he wanted the bands moved like 3 inches up. And so they had to rebuild the whole set that weekend and move like the bands 3 inches up for like shooting on Monday.
To clarify, is this the nightclub or the jazz?
No, this is the nightclub. Sorry. Yeah, you're talking about.
We were going to ask about that anyways.
Yeah. No, that's the nightclub. No, you're talking about the jazz where the guys, shot. Yeah, in the head. Yeah, that was a location. Yeah, that was not a build. Okay. The nightclub was a build because, we had so much destruction in that. So the jazz club was a location.
So you said that like the that was your set, and is it like there will be 5 set dressers and they're all given like one specific set, and then that's like your baby, and then you just like you do mostly that but help out a little bit also on other stuff? Or how does I guess how is the division how is the division of labor, I guess is my question.
Yeah, as a set designer, you're typically assigned a set. So, set designer is assigned a couple sets. Art director manages, the supervising art director manages everything. And then production designer, is on top of that and is responsible not just for all that and locations, but, being also, I know as you've talked to other designers, it's all about the entirety of the look of the film. So everything, props, a little bit of costumes and set dressing.
And the one other thing we've learned through production designers is that you're always designing the next thing, and that you're rarely on set watching your last. You're very rarely on set watching your last build be shot because you're working on the next thing.
Which is a good lesson for anybody who wants to go into production design. When you have a heavy night shoot, like Collateral was, the beauty of being a production designer is you just show up, open the set, and then you don't have to stay up all night with a crew. So, I'm doing a movie now, and I'm in Bulgaria doing a movie, and we're shooting a lot of nights, and the crew is exhausted. We just did a turnaround to days, and luckily I stay on a day schedule, because the nights our crew calls at like 7:30 or 8, and I'll show up and open the set, but then I get to sleep in my bed while they work all night in the rain.
Is opening the set just literally like unlocking the door and like talking to the property owner or whatever, and just being like, "You guys are good to go. Get in there, go shoot a movie"?
No, it's walking the director through a set. So whether it's location or a build, you walk with the director, and hopefully you've walked with the director prior to that. But you're there for any last minute adjustments, or says, "Hey, I don't think this is working. Like, let's swap out this artwork," or "I need this here." So you're there for those last minute, changes, and making sure it's because movies you really don't see a set in its final form until just the instant before it's being shot, for the most part. That's not fully dressed, fully lit, which is always a challenge on a movie, that you're picking paint colors and designing without having the DP fully light the set until he turns the lights on, and you really see it in the proper lighting, and you see it through the lens. More importantly, the eye is very deceiving. You always have to, be thinking through the lens and what you're actually going to see, on camera.
Until you mentioned it, I never thought about it, but was Collateral like all night shoots?
It was pretty much all night, so it was brutal. It was brutal.
That sounds awesome.
Yeah. I think in sometimes, even when you're shooting on stage, like when we did that nightclub scene, you would stay with the night shooting schedule, because it doesn't make sense to turn over the crew to shoot during day, even though you certainly could shoot it during the day.
Because you'd have to reacclimate everyone's bodies, I would imagine.
Yeah, so that's always a tricky one. That's I don't know how many first ADs you've talked to, but that's a really tough job on a movie of figuring out scheduling, days, nights, crew, extras. It's a massive logistical. It's a tough job, and I'm always very impressed with what first ADs have to pull off.
Parth, Jordan, wasn't that a great interview with Clint Wallace? Part 1.
I love Clint Wallace. I love Tom Cruise and the movie Collateral.
Collateral.
Didn't his hair look so silly?
Blonde. I think we talk about that.
Oh, yeah, we do talk about that.
Or maybe that was a before air thing. Just to break the ice with Clint Wallace.
Yeah, this is part 1 of our talk with Clint Wallace. Part 2 comes out next week. There's some good stories, some other movies that he's worked on.
I mean, like we said, we still don't know.
Yeah,
actually
I guess I'm just assuming, because I don't really remember. But Trent, before we tell people to go follow us on social media, go to review us on Apple Podcast, Spotify, and tell us to their friends and everything. Before we do that, I have a funny story to tell you, and it relates to what happened at my internship today. Well, not really so much about my internship. So today, when I was at New York Penn Station and I was waiting for the TV to tell what track the train was boarding at,
Yeah.
I was waiting and I was like my balance seems weird. Like, what's wrong right now? And then tried moving around and I was like, is the floor uneven? And I looked down. I was wearing 2 different pairs of shoes.
Really?
Wait, I was literally gonna make a joke.
And I looked down in like disbelief and I was like, this is like a cartoon character thing or like in a show or in a sitcom type of like, but like I don't know how I didn't notice it. But I didn't.
Say
Were they
what-
similar looking shoes?
No, one is black and one is blue. One has Adidas written over it and the other has a nothing.
Parth, something's going on.
Do you think I'm maybe overworked, maybe tired?
That's what I'm implying.
Or does it just have nothing to do with that? It was just this silly one-off gag.
No, I think it's a warning sign of a larger issue.
Join us next week for part 2 of our discussion with
Clint
Wallace.
Banger alert!
Yes, it's true.
Wait. Sound the alarm.
What?
Wait, not the nuclear bomb alarm.
Wait, no.
I don't have the
like,
nuclear bomb effect.
banger alert. And like,
You don't have the nuclear bomb effect?
Nah, when would I ever use it?
Parth, you said-
Fucking number it.
Listen to part 2 of our discussion with Clint Wallace, set
Wallace.
decorator of Collateral, next week.
And other movies.
And other movies. Top Gun Maverick, John Wick,
Wow.
Chapter 3, Parabellum.
Parth, do you like Top Gun Maverick? Did you give it 5 stars?
Do I like
Did you give-
Top Gun Maverick?
Did you give it
What
5
an
stars?
intriguing question.
Did you?
Maybe this will answer it for you.
I hate that song. I hate it.
Sorry, I'm laughing because you were doing that, and as it was happening, Brandon texted in our friend group chat to asking Jordan to pay for her utilities, and now she's sad.
I'm not sad. I'm disappointed.
You wouldn't like Jordan when she's angry. Wait, Trent, you often say that to me.
That you wouldn't like Jordan when she's angry?
No, that like generally it's you wouldn't want to get Jordan angry, but somehow you always manage to.
Wow, you're really cutting at some real issues.
So that was just supposed to be a joke, but I felt some real tension there. That was interesting. Maybe we should talk about that. Anyways,
Off the air. Let's talk about it on next week's episode with Clint Wallace, part 2. How's that?
sounds good. Do you want to tell the people where they can find us?
On the Instagram, Craft Services, and also on Twitter, Craft Services Pod.
Apple Podcast.
Apple Podcast, Spotify, write a review, 5 stars, tell a friend.
Wow,
Enjoy
Trent,
yourself.
You
Have a good
seem
day.
really into this recording, and that's what I love about you. Committed. All right.
Right.